Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. We are nearing the end of day 2 of Google Cloud Next. I really hope that you enjoyed all the sessions that you've attended, lots of networking, and of course, lots and lots and lots of talks about generative AI. My name is Helene Ambiana. I am the Startup and SMB Marketing Director here at Google Cloud. Joining me on this panel today is Lukas, who is a co-founder and CEO of Weights and Biases, and Will Grannis, who is our Vice President and CTO here at Google Cloud. Please help me say hello to Lukas and Will. OK, so I'm going to start with my first question with Lukas. I have a clicker here. Yes. Yes. Lukas, I read a lot about you. You know, I kind of tracked you, yes, online. And one thing I know about you is that you are passionate about machine learning. So much so that you have launched not 1, but 2 machine learning startups, yes. And the current one was Crowdflower, yes. 10 years apart. Can you believe this? So Crowdflower, and now Weights and Biases, which aims to make the complex and often chaotic development of machine learning models more streamlined, efficient, and collaborative. Lukas, what are some of the most common challenges that your customers face?
Well, that's a big question.
Yes.
I feel like maybe we should sort of focus in on Gen AI, because it's been such a theme here. So if you narrow it down to the Gen AI customers, I think they are almost all really struggling with this effect that I think was true in machine learning, but like even more true in Gen AI, where it's so easy to make an amazing demo that blows everyone's minds, especially like the CEO and board members.
Yes.
And it's like so hard to then take that unbelievable demo and make it work reliably. So I think everyone probably here is struggling with that painful effect, right? Where like, I feel like in software engineering, you talk about like the first 90% and the second 90% and then the third 90%. But I feel like you might even need like 10 more stages with Gen AI applications, because it's so hard to get that last piece of reliability that your customers really want for whatever the application is.
Absolutely. If I probably talk a bit more on Gen AI and your experience, how can leaders move quickly to accelerate their business, transform their workplaces, and do this responsibly?
Well, I mean, I think like when I was thinking a lot about, OK, we've watched a lot of customers now. I think Gen AI has been really popular among enterprises for maybe like a year and a half. And so we've seen a lot of enterprises talk about getting Gen AI deployed into production. And we've seen some of them successfully get it deployed and others not. So I think a lot about like, OK, what's really going on in the ones that actually successfully get it deployed. And I think the theme broadly of the ones that are successful is that they're really obsessed with evaluation. Okay. And that comes in like a lot of different forms. There's like sort of like, OK, let's like quickly make a test set where we can just like kind of try this thing first on like 10 examples really fast and just like iterate quickly, right? And then it's like, OK, we want a set of like things we can just like never possibly get wrong. And we want that to keep expanding, where every time we have a new model, we just run it against that and just like, we're really sure it doesn't mess that up. And then we want maybe kind of more complicated things where some of the examples are generated by Gen AI itself and the models are testing themselves and all these kind of crazy pipelines to do that. And then there's like this obsession of evaluation in production where the users can give feedback and that gets fed back into the model. And I think that the people that are focused on that generally steadily improve and eventually get their thing in a working place where they can deploy it.
Yes.
And then other people are just sort of honestly like baffled by the idea that you'd want to test rigorously at all, right? And like I think like ML people are kind of trained to want to test. It's sort of like that's like what you do as like a grad student, right? But I think like what's so cool about Gen AI is suddenly you can do it's opening up to like lots of like software developers that come from like lots of different backgrounds that didn't have this sort of training in just sort of like doing quantitative testing all the time. And so you see people will we keep joking about this, but several different customers are like, the way we do testing is we do testing by vibes. And it's like they like laugh, but it's like laughing because it's true. That's actually what they're doing, right? And it's like it's actually not crazy because like a startup founder should sort of be doing testing by vibes, where you're like looking at this like, okay, does it feel good? That's a good thing to do. But if that's the only thing that you're doing to test your stuff, what'll happen is, you get something out, but then you can never iterate, because like you keep the vibes feel better with the new thing on the latest thing you tried, but the last thing, that used to feel good just got worse with whatever change you made. Does that make sense?
It's certainly been our experience over a long period of time that experimentation is actually what yields the best results. And so it's hard to do really great experimentation if you don't know where you're starting from, you don't know what you're trying to evaluate, and you don't know if you're actually iteratively making progress towards that goal. And so this vibes thing can also manifest itself like brand alignment. It's spitting out results that are aligned with the brand. Well, what does that really mean? What does brand alignment for you mean? And if these customers don't have a sense of that, then it's really hard to work backwards into the testing regime and say like, okay, we're making progress. So that's certainly been one of at least our observations, as well as deploying Gen AI at scale with a lot of our customers, is what are you actually trying to accomplish, and then how are you setting up an iterative experimentation pipeline to get there?
I agree with that. Even in my world of growth marketing, experimentation, a constant flow of trying, testing, failing, trying again, iterating, improving is definitely what we need to do to get the best outcomes.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Will, I'm going to turn to you. We have a very good partnership between Google Cloud and Lukas's company, Weights and Biases. Can you tell the audience what we are doing from Google Cloud to help companies like Lukas's do a better job at servicing their customers?
You can be specific at Weights and Biases.
Yeah.
I have some suggestions.
Right. Is this a feature request session? Okay.
My platform team is right there.
Right. Where's the product team? All right. Do we have our roadmap ready? Okay. So first off, I think it's an understatement to call you just a partner. You're actually the technology partner of the year for Gen AI overall this year. So congrats to Weights and Biases. Well earned. And so, in my opinion, how did you land there? Well, first, GCP is a multi-tenant platform for scaled computation to help people get things done quickly, right? And so, when I was in the sign-up flow for Weights and Biases, I found that I could spin up a notebook really quickly in GCP. I get Weights and Biases installed, pip install, and I'm off and running within probably 2 to 3 minutes. And that sounds like a small thing, but actually the way you've instrumented sign-up flow and really getting developers, and even in this age of Gen AI, even kind of maybe non-experts, you're bringing them in and making it easy to get started. A lot of the tutorials that you have are really, really easy to follow with examples. You can kind of see the real-time graphing and experimentation outputs that you provide. And I think that's just such a great match for the spirit of cloud, which is you should be able to bring up ephemeral resources really quickly. They should be well instrumented into whatever surface you're using. In this case, notebooks is something that we're very aligned on with Weights and Biases. Has been a focus for us in Vertex for a long time, and even Colab and many other surfaces. So we have some similar principles in how to surface the experimentation environment, make it really fluid. And so I think that maybe that's been helpful to you. You're the ultimate arbiter of whether what we're doing is helpful for you. But the reason why we both laughed at first when you asked this question is because we had a candid conversation, about a week ago? And we were talking about, hey, we're going to go do this thing in Vegas. And I'm like, Lukas, no BS, why did you get started with us? He's like, credits. So you don't have to say it. So you don't have to say it. I'm going to save you from saying it. Okay, so it's credits. But that's also important. And I was like, no, that's fine. This is exactly what I want to hear. This is exactly what I think other people should hear, is that we have programs in Google Cloud that will help you get started very quickly and kind of take that chance. And if you don't yet understand the difference between 3 cloud providers and GPUs here versus GPUs there, or ephemeral compute resources, fine. That's why we create these programs, so you can get to know us. And hopefully, I'm not speaking for you, but based on all the progress we've been making really quickly, I think just lowering that barrier to giving it a try has resulted in a really successful partnership that today is integrated into a number of ways in GCP.
Totally.
Do you have anything else to add to how
how
Will has been helping you? and feature requests.
Oh yeah, where's the platform? I mean, it's funny. It's actually. I was thinking about, I have a friend who always jokes that like, if you're really successful in software, eventually your software is like hated. Right. Just because it's like, the stuff that you use all the time is like the stuff that drives you nuts.
Yep.
And then it's funny. Like I was thinking about, I mean, I can't really have a deep technical conversation around like, the piece of infrastructure that we use. Like I really, that's not really my background. But what I do know is like when, our platform team gets upset about, like a product, like that's what I really feel. So I feel like I feel, when something is like breaking or like not working quite right. But it's kind of interesting because like, that just like shows how deeply core these things are to us, right? Like when we lose like, parts of infrastructure, even like, something is like adding like a little bit of latency, it's like super intense, right? So, I think that, I think we've like really come to trust that you guys are really responsive when we have issues, and that's the thing that matters the most to us, right? Yeah. Because like if you have the ability to destroy our business like that, I mean, it's like our all of our stuff is like running on top of your infrastructure. So I feel like for us, it's so much more about like reliability and responsiveness in our infrastructure than any particular feature that you might add.
Yeah, and that's really, what you're speaking to is so core to how we design systems, because we've been operating at scale, many billions of users across like 12 technical platforms every single day. Like if we screw something up, like if search isn't available, if the technical infrastructure goes down, that's a pretty bad day for a lot of people. Okay, maybe your YouTube videos don't load as fast, maybe your day's actually maybe better in some ways, but for a lot of these surfaces that are critical to people's lives. And so that's deeply inculcated in the technical infrastructure teams and the cloud teams that are building this infrastructure that sits under the hood. One other thing I was thinking about too, as you were describing this, is when you get started, what do you need? You need documentation. And you made a comment to me that really hit home, which is we're both really strong believers in, as you're getting people started and through how to use these capabilities, you do this and we do this, is we provide actual examples and samples inside of our documentation. So you don't have to go searching around or like hit 3 different websites and copy Control-C, Control-V and paste it in. It's like literally right there. And little things like that I think make a really big difference in velocity too, and kind of user retention and user growth.
Amazing. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit looking at trends. And this question is for you, Lukas. So when you look at trends in machine learning or generative AI, what are those that excite you the most? And how are you positioning your company to be at the forefront of those trends?
Well, I'm going to give a super controversial answer here that I'm excited about.
Yes, we like that.
Excited about Gen AI.
Like, wait a minute.
I feel like there's something there. I don't know.
Could be huge.
Yeah, could be a thing. I mean, I will say, I think it's kind of easy to gloss over that one, right? Like you're sort of looking for a more interesting answer than that. But it hasn't, like the Gen AI stuff, it hasn't been clear that it's working this well for very long. Mm-hmm. And now, actually, almost every company has a program to get these things into production. Many of them actually do have it in production now. So it's a huge deal for us. And it's actually like a big, essentially like kind of existential moment for our business, right? Because we started off in ML ops, and that's like the persona I know really well. That's like machine learning is like what I've done my whole career. And so we built a product that I love for like an audience that I love, that I like know really well, right? These ML engineers. And some of those ML engineers worked at like Anthropic and OpenAI, and
yes.
Google is the one company, that foundation model company, that really doesn't use weights and biases for the foundation model, but one day maybe that'll change.
We're working our way there.
Yeah.
Yes, Will.
Maybe you could talk to somebody about that. But
he's next to you.
This session being recorded.
It's a great product. I'm totally unbiased.
Oh, that was a great one.
It'll slow down, yeah. But I guess what happened was, these foundation model builders actually really changed the way that I think you'd want to do ML for many, many applications, right? So I think for many things that I used to build a model or want to build a model to do, now you can hook up to a foundation model API and with no fine tuning, get better results. And it's so cool, right? Because now, the kind of core skill to like unlock a lot of this stuff is way more on the side of software developer than ML engineer, which I think some people think, it sounds like the same thing, but really I think it's a pretty different kind of person, different proclivity, right? Like, ML engineers, I think, are released as sort of this experimental workflow, whereas software developers, it's really kind of this like building mindset. And so, for us, we're like, wow, we have this whole new kind of persona in the software developer that, like wants to do essentially like AI applications, not really can do AI applications. And so we've been working hard on a similar experimental product, but one that's like really for them, right? So I think we're going to show a QR code at the end. This is Weave, which is available. We haven't like publicly, put out into the world yet. So we were hoping that people here would try that.
Yes.
If you're a software developer and you're using any LLM, hopefully Weave could be helpful for you. But that's been our focus here for the last year. Is like we want to make tools for a new persona, which is a funny thing for a company that calls itself Weights and Biases, right? I mean, we really, we were sort of like, okay, we want to name something that like no one will understand except for ICP, and we're like okay with that, But then now I think it's just, now I think this is the democratization of AI that people always wanted, but it happened in I think maybe a different way than people expected.
I think what you just said touches a bit on my next question as I'm probing. The AI is advancing so fast, yes. So how can you align, or we, and Will, you can also jump in, align infrastructure development with this rapid development to promote not only global competitiveness, but also inclusion?
What do you think, Will?
That's a big question. So one thing is making that compute, that underlying infrastructure, more readily available, easily spun up. I think that is like the time we're living in right now, where can you get access to the right compute at the right time? One of the things that's really interesting about Weights and Biases, speaking of great features, is I was in it earlier today, and then it's like, hey, you're connected to a GPU runtime, but you're not using the GPU. Do you want to switch out? And I thought that was really cool. And so, those types of very like atomic features are kind of at the bridge of infrastructure optimization and availability, but also like user experience and efficiency. And I think that's the next year or two, especially given the conditions of compute availability, it's going to be little things like that instrumented into the experience that are going to make they're going to be a really big deal. And it seems very small, but you manifest that over many, many developers, many people trying to create these new experiences. Stuff like that's a really big deal. One thing I also mentioned too, I was on a panel earlier this week and we were talking about detecting asteroids so that they don't hit the Earth and destroy us all. And the physicists and these scientists also made the comment that they feel like this current age of Gen AI is also bringing ML more and software development more into like core science curriculum and core humanities curriculum. And so, people like the education system also is going to start morphing a little bit where they'll have more sensibilities about software development and machine learning and data science because now it's a little more approachable. You get in kind of almost like a natural language access to computer science or natural language access to computation. And so they were even describing how curriculum in these kind of physical sciences will change as well. And I think that, you talk about global impact.
Yes.
Starting right there at the source in science, pretty big impact.
And what about inclusion? There have been a lot of sessions today about diversity and inclusion in tech. I had breakfast with founders. We had Melanie Parker, our chief diversity officer, hosting several panel discussions. And there is a recurring theme around responsible AI, of course, but also how do we take advantage of the rapid evolution of generative AI to continue also to advance diversity and inclusion in the community, in our own teams as well, and of course in our own organizations.
Well, that's a really big question. I'd say one piece of it that I care a lot about when I look at, I feel like a lot of, when companies sort of mess up on, inclusion stuff and it ends up in the newspaper, you get all these things, all these stories that make people feel, I think, worried about AI and like the bad effects it could have. And I think they're all real. Like I think like, I think it's probably good that we're like paying attention to the bad effects and the bad, basically products that get, released. And I think like when you like look at the totality of those stories, I think really it's generally unintended consequences. It's like things that the model did that you didn't think it was going to do. Like they would have liked to not do the things that got them in the New York Times, you know, like in almost every case, right? And so, but I think like, okay, like why does that happen, right? I think, and that's a sort of a special kind of failure mode. I think that has like sort of this like salience, but there's also like, for every one of those, there's like 1,000 ways that something's breaking and causing like problems, you know? And I think that, you know, one of the things I've always been really passionate about is like showing the machine learning practitioner or the software developer doing these things, what's actually happening. Like make it really easy to see like what the product's doing. Like it's surprising, like, you know, we talk to like autonomous vehicle companies where the machine learning engineers can't like easily see like what the car is seeing and the prediction it's making. Like they can see like an aggregate, like a number that's like it's 93% accurate, but it's kind of hard for them to just like surface like, okay, here's a picture of a car, you know, and like what it's seeing, and here's where it thinks the pedestrians are, you know?
Yes.
And so we've really, one of the, I think, underappreciated features of the Weights and Biases product is really trying to get people to actually look at specific examples of what's happening and what's going on. And I think if people look at that more, I think that it'll help software developers, machine learning engineers that really are building these products. I mean, they really become product managers eventually because it's such the core of these products. I think it like helping them really see what the model is doing, I think helps make for better products. And so I feel like that's our best contribution to that.
And Helen, if I may, just a heads up to all of you, start prepping your questions because I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to be turning it over to you in not too many more minutes here. So hopefully you brought your hard-hitting day 2 happy hour questions for us. All right.
Will.
Yes, and before we do that, indeed, Lukas, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
You've been very successful, yes, and the audience here, I'm sure, would like to know any piece of advice that you would give to tech executives whose teams are just starting to implement either ML ops or Gen AI principles and tools.
Okay, I have a lot to say on this, but if I had to give like one piece of advice, like not knowing anything about what somebody's doing, I would say you probably want to get a thing working end to end faster than you think, like way, way faster than you think. Like I feel like people often have this intuition, like, okay, I'm gonna like build the ML piece of this thing. Well, first maybe I'll get some data, and then I'll build the Gen AI thing. Then I'll like fine tune it for a while, and then I'll like put it inside like an application. And then I'll like maybe like find a user and see if they like what's happening, right? Or like like show it to like the business, And the problem there is like, I think that's just it's a bad design pattern for anything, but I think it's particularly bad for Gen AI applications because the end result depends on so many things that are not really the accuracy. Like the end success of the project depends on so many things that are not really just the accuracy of the model you have, and so it's really easy to just start like zooming in on that and trying to make the accuracy higher and higher. And accuracy can mean so many like different things, right? Like even like these RAG applications everybody's talking about, it's like you can like return something that's pretty relevant to the question, but false, right? That's like really bad, right? In some applications that would be like a disaster. In others maybe it's okay, right? Or you could return some like nonsensical thing that's that's true. I mean, there's so many like different things to measure. I guess that's another thing that we see in like real world customers that we work with is like over time, the number of metrics that they're looking at just like grows and grows and grows. And you might think like, how could you look at like 1,000 metrics for like some kind of like, retrieval system that you have? But it's because all of these metrics are sort of imperfectly capturing is the product doing what it's intended to do. So I think like getting to the point where you can like get that product out and like see how users feel about it. It's good advice for startups, but I think it's even better advice for people working on Gen AI applications.
Thank you so much, Lukas and Will, for this productive conversation. Now we are going to open it up to the audience for questions.